Well, hi everyone, and welcome to PhotoshopMasterEffects.com. I am Corey Barker, and appreciate you guys coming and checking out the site. Of course, you're here to watch this free video, and I really hope you enjoy it. It's some really cool 3D stuff. But while you're here, go ahead and check out the rest of the site and see all the other things I have to offer around here. So just have a look around and give me some feedback. If you wanted to, if there's something you want to see, a particular technique or tutorial, by all means, go to the Ask Me tab at the top and go ahead and send a request, and I'll do what I can. All right, now in this video, I wanted to show you another cool discovery. I'm really having a lot of fun with illuminated objects in Photoshop recently, 3D illuminated objects. If you check out, there's a molten steel effect that I did just recently. It's over on the Master Effects training page, and really cool effect of using illuminated objects to create this kind of realistic molten steel, forged steel kind of look on it. And this is just continuing playing with it a little bit more in a more design sense, and we're just going to have some fun with some text by creating illuminated objects out of the shapes here. So I've already got my text set on a text layer here, and I'm just using the font Futura, and you can notice I can use a lowercase I just to make it a little bit more interesting looking. And we are going to go ahead and make this a 3D object. So I'm going to go to the 3D menu and go down here to New 3D Extrusion from Selected Layer. It's going to go ahead and give me the 3D there. And as usual, you want to have your 3D and properties panels open when you're editing 3D objects like this. Okay, let's check that out. There we go. Put my layers panel back over here. Okay, so now it's in 3D. What I'm going to do is grab my current view here in the 3D panel, and that moves my camera. And I'm going to grab my Universal Rotate 3D tool up here in the options bar at the very top here. And I can just move this around and see what the object looks like sitting on the ground plane there. Obviously, right off the bat, the extrusion depth is a little deeper than I want it to be. So I'm going to select the object, and you'll notice when the box appears and the little widget here appears. But when you do that, I'm going to go over here in the properties panel and just drag the extrusion depth down to a much smaller number. I want to have some depth to it because we want to have some reflection going on there. So let's do it at about 125 pixels there. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit default camera, bring that back to the front view there. There we go. And going to add a couple more things to this. I'm going to reselect that text object here in the 3D panel, and I'm going to go over here into the properties panel again and click on the third tab at the top here. And we're just going to put a little bit of a bevel on this so there's not going right to the edge when we add the illuminated front face here on that. So just give it about a 10% bevel on that, and that'll work just fine. Okay. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and get my background texture. We need a surface for this, for these lights to, of course, reflect off of. We're going to have the front faces of these text objects illuminated, but we won't be able to know that unless they're reflecting off something. So we're going to need a texture to be able to do that. And you can, of course, use any texture you like that you might find interesting. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and use this texture here. And this is a very simple abstract texture that I think will work really well for this effect. And I do not need this. I'm going to put that in RGB. Don't flatten. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this texture and just drag it as is, drag and drop it over to the working document here. Now I'm going to hold the Shift key down as I do that so it will land in the center, and there we go. Then I need to make this, of course, a 3D object as well if I'm going to have it interacting with the text. So instead of doing an extrusion like we did with the text, in this case, I'm going to go and make sure the layer is selected, of course. Go to the 3D menu again, and this time go to New Mesh from Layer and choose Postcard. And that's going to simply put that flat two-dimensional image in a three-dimensional space. So here, if I rotate it around, you can see it's still flat, but in that 3D space. Now, I need to merge this, of course, with my existing 3D object. In my Layers panel, you'll notice I now have two 3D layers, one of the text and one of the postcard here. Now, I'm going to merge it. Let me just put this down here. So there is the order you would assume we would want. I want the texture behind it and the text in front. But like layer styles, when you merge two layers together, when you merge them down, it will assume the properties of the layer below. So I'm going to want to go ahead and keep the elements that I've got on this text layer. So just put the postcard layer above that 3D layer, and then just press Command E, and that's going to merge it down. So now you can see there's that object fused in there. Now, I do not want the surface to be parallel to the text like this, as you can see right there. I actually want it to be like a floor, a ground plane, if you will. So we're going to need to rotate it. So we need our properties panel, of course, and the 3D panel. Now in the 3D panel, I'm going to go in, and you'll notice, even though we have these objects merged in a single 3D layer, we can still manipulate each one of them, as you can see right here in the 3D panel. So I'm going to select the layer, which is the background texture. In fact, we can go ahead and rename this if you want, background texture. And the text item is, of course, what the text is, so we're just going to leave on that one as it is. All right, so with background texture selected, you're going to go over to the properties panel, and up here you've got these two tabs. Click on the second one, and that is your coordinates tab. And you're going to go right here to the middle area where the angle settings is. Here's where you can modify the angle of your X, Y, and Z axis of the object. We want to just go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees on the X axis, and there you go. And if I rotate my camera again, as you can see, there is that object. Now it's perpendicular to the text. But it's cutting through the text, and that's no good. So go and select the background texture yet again in the 3D panel, and just go to the little pop-up menu here for the 3D panel and choose Move Object to Ground Plane. And boom, it slams it right down. Slams it to the floor, if you will. There you go. So now our text is sitting on that surface. So now we need to, of course, change a few things. Let's do some scaling. So I'm going to select the object here, or rather, let's select the text and scale it down. And I'm just using my widget here. Just put it over the cube there in the center. That's your scale setting. But when I did that, of course, scales it to the center, which raises it off the ground plane there. So you're just going to simply select that text layer again and then choose that Move Object from ground to ground plane. There we go. Once more. Okay. So now, let's go ahead and bring our layers panel out. I'm going to make the background black in a minute. We'll just leave it white for now, just for the sake of visibility. I'm going to go ahead and bring this closer to me. And notice when I'm moving the camera, the current view right here. And we're just changing the angle. In this case, we're moving the camera closer, which makes the object appear closer to us in the window here. There we go. Okay. So now let's start messing around with the illumination. So I'm going to select the text object itself, and we're going to twirl down and reveal the different meshes or materials that we can modify on this object. And the first thing I want to do, remember the extruded sides of the text here? I'm going to go ahead and select that, which is the lit extrusion material right here in the 3D panel. And I want to have that a reflection and a shine. So I'm going to put those in about in the middle. And I'm going to boost the roughness up a little bit, which this really should be called softness because it tones down the reflection, making it a lot softer. So it's a much smoother on there. So that I'm going to put it around 10. So we can, of course, modify that later on if we need to. So let's go ahead and put that again at 10. Press enter. There we go. Now, I want to illuminate the front face of the text. So you're going to select LIT, front inflation material. And then here in the properties panel, you're going to see these properties at the top, diffuse, specular, and illumination. Go ahead. Now, you can do this, of course, one of two ways. Anytime there's a swatch here or a folder, you can generate a texture file, or you can go ahead and assign it using the color picker. I just get in the habit, you can really do it both ways, but I just get in the habit of going ahead and creating a new texture. That way I can go in and modify it, or perhaps if I want, add a different texture to the color or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a small file, 1000 by 1000 pixels, and click OK. And it will go ahead and open it up. Now my wireframe, of course, shows me the outline of my text there. Now this is an illuminated texture, so whatever colors we put in here, that's the color it's going to illuminate. So let's just add kind of a bright color like that, and we'll close that. Save the changes, and there my front face fills in with the color. Now, I know it looks just like we just changed the color of the text, which we did, but it also is actually giving off light. Now, we don't see that because we have to do a render, and that's what we got this surface down here for. But before we do that, let's set the mood, if we will, by going in, selecting environment in the properties panel, or the 3D panel here. And then when you do that, you're going to jump over to the properties panel, and you're going to see IBL right here. we're going to go ahead and make a new one. So go ahead and click on the folder and choose New Texture. And again, make this a small file, 1000 by 1000 pixels. Doesn't need to be big. And again, it's going to default fill it with white. So let's go back and edit texture. I'm going to press Command I, and that's going to invert the white background to black. And then on a new layer, I'm just going to simply, if you've seen me use 3D IBLs before, you know where I'm going with this. Just a simple oval with a gradient, white gradient inside of it, just like that. And I think I'm going to drop the opacity down a little bit. We'll close that, save the changes. Now we have the IBL, and then because we have the reflection property set on the sides of the text, when I move this IBL around, notice I can see the reflection on the edge there. Perfect. Okay. Now, in the lights section, which is the fourth tab at the top of the 3D panel, go ahead and click on that, and you're going to see that you have an infinite light generated by default. This was created when you created the first extruded text element there. What we're going to do here is simply turn it off. And you're going to see the image pretty much go dark. Now, the text didn't go dark because it's an illuminated object. I'm actually going to select the background layer and do Command I, and now we're ready to see how our surface looks. Oh, before we do that, did I apply reflections to the surface? We've got a 3D and properties panel. So in the 3D panel, we need to go to the postcard texture, which is that layer 1 one right here. And over here in the properties panel, we need, so I didn't do it, shine and reflection, set those pretty high. And I'm just going to go ahead and start a render, which is Shift Option Command R, and it's going to start making some paths. And I'm getting a little bit of a blotchy element there. Let's actually change our view slightly. Now, that is because of a couple of little bugs we need to fix here. I'm going to go into the environment property here, and the ground plane shadow, we need to go ahead and just get rid of that. So make that 0. And we need to add that texture. Now, we created that texture as the base of our background texture there, but we really need it to have a bump map, to actually have a tangible texture to it that will reflect the light. So go in the 3D panel and locate that background texture, which is the right here that we renamed. Select the sublayer underneath it, which is layer 1. And then you're going to go over here to the bump properties in the properties panel here. And you're just going to create a new document. And keep it the same size as everything else, 2000 by 2000. And it goes ahead and opens up that file. Now, we're going to go back to that texture, and I'm just going to drag and drop it over. Since it's set to the same size and everything looks pretty good. Now, when it comes to bump maps, anything that's light will be set to come forward, and anything dark will get pushed back in space. So looking at this texture now, we know that these darker areas are going to kind of push in a little bit, and the lighter areas will get pushed out as they come out. So I'm going to leave it like that for now, and let's just see what it looks like, and then we can always come back and change it. So let's go ahead and close that and save the changes. And let's go ahead and just do another render. See what we get versus the ground plane. See, now we're getting that texture is interacting and reflecting the light in a very natural way. So we're actually getting a more realistic kind of wet surface that our text is sitting on there. Isn't that cool? Okay. Now, I'm going to go and select my current view. Now, I want to get a really, really dramatic angle of this text. So when you have current view selected, which is the camera, you can go in the properties panel and set basically the millimeter lens you're looking at this object through. So of course I'm going to go set this at a lower number so I get a much more wide angle dramatic view here. And when you do that, it tends to push it back in space, and that's because you're changing the lens. So you just grab with the current view still selected, just use your drag tool, 3D tool, and just click down and drag it forward, or to bring it forward toward you. And then there we got a much more dramatic angle of our text there. Let's just do another quick render and see how this is looking. Really cool. Okay. Now, one critical thing we need to do, let's do a save. Especially when you're doing 3D, you gotta always do a save there. So save, or let's go 3 lit text. Now, I'm going to select that background object. I want to scale it a little bit bigger and actually move it back a little bit so we get that. Now, I want to have the letters here. I want them to be different colors. I need them to be each a different illuminated color. We started with this kind of pinkish color, and that works fine, but I only want that on the letter T. I want the dot on the I and the I itself and the letter L to all be different colors. Now, I can't do that right now when it's an editable 3D object. So if we go into Edit Source, we can go in here and change the text itself, but when it comes to the color, it's affecting all of the object itself. So we've got to split this object apart. So let's go ahead and discard that. So in order to be able to do that, you're going to make sure you got that object selected here in the 3D panel, which is the text object. Go to the 3D menu and go down here and choose Split Extrusion. And what that does is now it makes each of the letters individual 3D objects. Though they are still in the same 3D layer, they're now individual objects, which I can manipulate their positioning independently. So I can move this. Oh, so use the widget. When you hover over an area, you can edit it and move it along that axis here. So I can do that there and rotate my lettering here. This is where you start to have a little bit of fun with the positioning. And this is what's cool about 3D is that you're kind of the art director, photographer, and designer all in the same scenario right here. So you're positioning it, lighting it, doing all the blocking, everything like that. So it's really a lot of fun. All right. So now let's make these different colors. Now, I just want to show you real quick. Start with the letter L, and I need to do the front inflation, which is, of course, that color. And if I go in here and choose Edit Texture, and let's just go ahead and give us a different color fill, like a bright yellow. Close it and save the changes. Uh-oh, it did it to all the letters. I don't want it to do that. So what you need to do is create an entirely new illumination texture for this letter. So we'll go ahead and create a new one. And we'll just keep it small. Again, 1000 by 1000. And now we'll fill it with the yellow, close it, save the changes, and there it is, nicely updated. Now, select the eye. The eye is still one object. The dot of the eye and the eye itself are still one 3D object. So you'll notice when I move it around, it moves around the whole thing. So we need to do a split extrusion one more time. So go to 3D again, split extrusion. Now the object is extruded, and we can edit them individually. So let's go and do the dot. That, we can't do the edit texture. We got to do new texture. There we go. 1000 by 1000. And this one I'm going to give just a bright blue color. That's just the dot of the eye there. And now let's just get this last one here. And we'll go ahead and let's give that one a green. New texture? Yeah, the new texture. So 1000 by 1000. Oh, no, let's get this bright fluorescent green here. There we go. All right, love it. There we go. Okay. So now we got all those elements on different colors now. Now, here's something else I want to do. Now, if you want to do a quick render at this point, you can just kind of get an idea what you're looking at, and this will give you an idea. So reflections look good. Everything's all right. So, but now, that's cool and dramatic enough, but I want there to be some kind of light in the background here. So this is really cool. You don't necessarily have to do this. I'm just doing this so for the sake of visibility, but if you want to do it so you can see, I'm going to turn this, actually no. Before I do that, I'm going to keep this camera angle here, so I'm going to save it. So go in the camera settings and just choose save and call it home view 1. There we go. And I'm going to turn this around so we can see the back of this this lettering here. And what are we on? The T. We're going to select T down here. And we're going to do the back inflation material. Now, before I do that, you're going to select the object itself, the letter T here, and we're going to go into the third tab. Remember where we applied the bevel? Down here, you see the inflate properties. Take the, well, actually, no, before you do that, we're going to increase the strength. But before you do that, Up here at the top menu, set the sides to front and back. And then increase the strength amount. And this inflates the front and back face of the text. And to set it around 10 should be fine. So the front and back face are now inflated and bulging out. What this does is it increases the surface area and pushes the light to go in different directions as it illuminates off the surface here. So now here we're going to go to the back inflation material for the letter T and create an illumination texture for this. Or actually, no, we don't need to. Just so you can see, I'll just do this by doing the color swatch thing here. Because, actually, no, I do want to do it this way because I want to show you another element of lights. So I'm going to put this as a bright blue color. And then you've got this intensity dial up here. And you can just increase the amount of glow from that. So do it at around 2, 3. So it's really bright blue light shining back there. And I'm going to go and go back to my home view here. So now we can't see it, but the back face of this T is now that bulging blue illuminated color. And when I go and do a render now, what we should see is that light illuminating on the back on the surface. See that? How cool is that? All right, so I'm going to go and do that to the other letters here. I'm not going to go ahead and look at the back because I don't need to see it. I just need to know in the 3D panel here for L back inflation, illumination, we'll do blue. Really bright. Push it up there. There we go. And once again, or lastly, we'll do the I. And again, back inflation material, illumination, blue. Like that. Now, so the surface of the texture receives the light much better. I'm going to go back to that texture. Where is it? Oh, it's up the top here. There we go. Background texture layer 1. Let's increase the amount of reflection and shine. And maybe boost the roughness just a little bit, maybe around 3, just so it softens it. Now, in order to get an even brighter reflection, you can go in here and just increase the brightness of the specular by making that color just a little bit kind of a lighter gray there. And you'll notice it's already working because the IBL is illuminating much brighter there. Notice how the bump map makes it look like a really realistic surface there. You can actually go into that environment property and move that light around there and change the way it looks on there. You don't want to have too much light on that texture because you want the light, the illumination to do it itself. So let's kind of push it right there. And let's go ahead and do another render here and see what we've got. So I'm just, again, pressing Shift Option Command R. And we're getting a good amount of light coming off that back texture there. All right. Now, I am going to just shift my angle here just a little bit. Because it's cool that it's reflecting on the surface and everything like that. However, let's add another element to here. Basically a back wall using the existing texture. So if you go and select that background texture here in the 3D panel, go in, because we want to go ahead and use the same properties, the reflection properties it's already using. Why go through all that again when all you have to do is just go into the pop-up menu of the 3D panel and choose Instance Object. Creates a linked version of that object, which I'm going to rotate on this axis here, essentially creating a back wall. And let's just maneuver it. Oh. This is where the widget gets a little tricky. And I'll just push that back. And that is essentially a back wall of our object. Slide this over here. And I'll do another render. And now the blue light from the back will be illuminating on that back wall as well as the surface. There you go. And then we're getting a much more interesting element there. A little bright, so let's adjust a few things here. Let's bring the intensity of that image-based light down. And I'm going to change my angle here a little bit, I think. And I'm going to go back to those back inflations and, me boost the intensity of those lights just a little bit more. Oh, another thing, if you want to do this, normally this works, but let's try it here. If you hold down the command key, you can select multiple properties. So if I wanted the back inflation of all these elements, and then I can apply the color, and then theoretically it will update all of them at the same time. So let's actually see what the render does. All right, looks pretty good. I need to make a few adjustments here, so I'm just going to hit escape, and let's go and first adjust the intensity of that background texture there. And really at this point, it's just a lot of tweaking. So we've got to let's tone down the reflection and perhaps even tone down the specular just a little bit. And let's go ahead and make sure we've got the bulging face of the back of all these other objects here. So we'll select that L. And remember we went in here and did the bulge out. Let's do front and back. Boost it to around 10. You won't really see the change on the front because it's so illuminated. It's all the same color, so it's really just going to kind of be a little different. I'm going to do the dot of the eye here. Let's go ahead and bulge that out a little bit. Now, one more thing you can do before we wrap this up is you can select the front inflation material. And again, I'm going to select the top one here. I'm going to hold down the command key and select front inflation materials for all of the objects, except the background texture, of course. And I'm just going to put a little bit of a shine and reflection on these. Now, once I do that, you'll notice that the text letters start to pick up the image-based light. So if I go and select environment and move this around, you can see the light interacting on the surface of the text there, and even on that little blue object there. So I'm actually going to get this and bring it forward a little bit. About like that. And again, like I said, this is where you're just kind of tweaking, trying different camera angles, seeing what works and what doesn't work. I think I'm going to even get a wider angle by going into that field of view with the current view selected. Make that like 15. And let's bring it closer. Really dramatic angles. Let's try a render with that and see where we get with that. Now, of course, depending on the speed of your machine, will determine how long the render takes when you're playing around with these types of objects there. But there, I think, looks pretty good. So once you get the objects in place in the environment and the properties, surface properties all in place, then it's just a matter of going in and tweaking each of the individual ones and playing around with the different settings. So we've got this realistic surface, and our text is just kind of sitting there and, again, illuminating from the surface. So we've got backlit text. So you're not just limited to the spotlight, point light, and the infinite light that's available in 3D, but you can make any object surface a light, an illuminating surface, if you will. I lost the word there. But any 3D object surface, you can make it illuminated and give it some really interesting effects, just like in here. And remember about going in and turning off those lights. If you notice that some areas are not lit or too bright, make sure that infinite light that is created in the original is turned off, because when you turn that on, that could throw some light on the scene and really just kind of throw everything off. So make sure that light is out, because you want your most of your light coming from the 3D text there, and of course illuminating in the backlight there on the back surface. All right, so thank you guys for checking out PhotoshopMasterEffects.com. Be sure to have a look around, check out the site, and if you have any ideas, suggestions, or just cool tutorials you might want to see, go to that Ask Me tab and send me a message. We'll see you guys next time.